So I wanted to record this because it's my last day in Kyiv, and I've been trying to figure out a time to do this, is to just speak. This is a great time. Look at those kids right behind me near, it's a McDonald's back there, and I just want you to look. They're just ordinary kids, all right? Who would want to kill them? This is the question that I've had since I first came to Ukraine back in 24. I stepped foot in here and I loved it, and I thought, why is somebody trying to kill these people? Why is somebody trying to extinguish this culture? It makes no sense. And those friends of mine that I've spoken with in Europe, whose grandparents primarily went through World War II, said, yes, Scott, this is how it works. You know, you're so naive that one day you're free, the next day you have Nazis marching down your street with a tank at their side. And it makes no sense. I'll tell you though, it makes no sense here because these people have wonderful values, we'll call it. The one that I see most commonly is they're willing to help a stranger. They are willing to just be kind. Yesterday, I was walking down the street, the main street, which maybe we'll get to on my walk here, Kyiv, near the Kyiv metro station. I encountered a gentleman who was African, and that's unusual here, at least in this day and age. And so I said, do you speak English? And I could hear he had a thick accent, but he did speak English. We had a nice conversation. Zachary, I'm going to use his name. Zachary is a very special man. I think maybe he was around 50 years old. I'm not sure. He's kind of timeless, you know. And he told me that he lives here full time. He first came here 2012, I think is what he said. And he's lived in many places around the world, including Canada, and where else did he say? Germany. Originally from Ghana, and I believe other places. And he said, I could live anywhere. He says, I have residence in many places. He says, I choose to live in Kyiv. And I said, why? And he says, because I love it here. And I get it. I love it here too. And what he said is that it's the people and the ease of life here. The people are kind. And as he said, Scott, I gave him my name. He's like, look, I'm a black man. And when I go in other countries, I get treated differently. He said, I get treated just the same as anybody in Kyiv. And he's lived in other parts of Ukraine also. He's been out west to the Carpathians, and he says, I got great friends who give me a place to live there. And that's exactly what I see, is that, as he said, look, you could go to the subway and be out of money, fumble around in your pockets, someone will walk up to you and say, hey, let me help you out, I'll pay for you. And he's exactly right. I just had a situation a little bit like that. Well, it's just showing kindness. Today I was walking around the neighborhood and there was a woman on a scooter, and she was carrying her lunch in a bag, and the bag gave way, and boom, out dropped all of her lunch that she had just paid for. And I stopped to help her pick it up. She's Ukrainian, and everything is a disaster. She lost her whole lunch. But I did find a piece of candy that came with her lunch, and I gave it to her. I called her. She was about to take off. I was like, hey. And she looked at it. She's like, oh, thank you. She spoke English. And then I took a couple steps, and she said, hold on. And she came back, and she gave that piece of candy to me. And she said, you helped me. Thank you so much. I mean, that's just the thing that goes on here frequently. And it's a reflection of kindness and a culture that appreciates life. And that's what I want people to know here, is that these people just want to be free. They want to live like everything I just said. They don't want to live in a Russian culture. This is not a Russian culture. And you can see the difference in the cultures without even going to their country. Admittedly, I have not been there. It doesn't matter. I see the way they fight their wars. And the Russians fight their war in a way that disrespects the individual. They are all about the motherland. They would far rather sacrifice many of their own in order to achieve a task. And that is not the Ukrainian way. That is not the American way. We make sure that we preserve the ability to be strategic and value life. And then when we capture the invaders, we treat them with respect under the Geneva Conventions. And that's not the case, okay? And that is not what the Russians are doing. I want all of my American friends especially to understand there are executions of prisoners happening. There are abuses, there are sexual assaults of men and women and men in the hands of the invaders. They do it systemically. It's not like they have just one bad egg. Clearly, every military around the world has bad eggs. That is different than a systemic approach to using sexual assault and torture as a weapon. And that is what's going on. That is not the way the Ukrainians fight their war. And as I walk around here, I get emotional because this is a beautiful city with beautiful people. And the fact that I have friends here now, they're Ukrainians, and that they have to raise their children in this atmosphere for the last 3 years is heartbreaking. I know that somehow, over the course of time, the stress that they're under will provide benefit to humanity. And this is where I have to go with this, because if we just look at this little snippet of time, this little balance sheet view of the situation, it's horrendous. And one will lose their sanity if it looks like that. And that's what I want to point out here to people who say, oh, Scott, what's it like there? You know, my friends in America primarily. And they think, oh, people must be, you know, losing their minds here and just terribly disturbed. Well, if they are, and they are concerned deeply, don't get me wrong, they also have the Ukrainians have a capacity to live. As one of them told me, if we focused only on the war every single day, we would expire, you know, we would lose our minds. And they are absolutely right. Look, if this is nothing else, it's this incredible lesson for all of us to focus on living each moment as it comes. It's easy for our minds to go to the future or the past. We can have fear of the future and desire revenge for the past. This is going to be a big issue here. It is everywhere. How do we stay out of fear and hatred? If there's any people that can pull it off, it's my Ukrainian friends here. I'm walking around and I'm seeing one of the sites over my shoulder back behind here that was attacked during early days of the war. We'll walk through that area, and it's remarkable how quickly the Ukrainians will repair and replace. They're not going to want it. They don't want to live in a damaged zone. They do, and this is Kyiv, which is heavily protected with air defense. That air defense does not exist in the eastern parts of the country. Cities like Kyiv that has been calling to me, they don't have that, and they get pounded every day, and yet they still survive. And this is what I tell people is, if you think that the Ukrainians will stop fighting because some leader other than their own says stop fighting, that is a mistake. Don't think about that. That's wrong. And why should they? Why should they stop? would any of us stop fighting for our families and for our land, for our home, because some foreign leader said stop fighting? No. If you haven't figured this out yet, this is a war of trying to wipe out a civilization. The invaders would love nothing more than to erase the Ukrainian culture, to never have it come up again, because they've been trying to do this for hundreds of years. And we in America, we're good people. You know, we really are. We make mistakes. We're divided, all of that stuff. At the end of the day, though, we have a sense of right and wrong that aligns with our hearts, really. Is it perfect? No, and we're still exploring that. We really are. We clearly have made mistakes in our past, and here's the difference between a growth mindset, if we want to go that direction, freedom-loving peoples versus Russians. So nobody in our country who's is going to be given any credibility or legitimacy thinks that it was a really good idea to have the Trail of Tears. Yeah, we needed to, that we needed to wipe out the Native Americans by marching them out of the East Coast and have them die along the way, and have women and children perish, and have mothers watch their children die on the trail. Okay, Andrew Jackson, President of the United States, ordered that. Again, nobody thinks that that's a good idea these days. The Russians, if you poll their peoples, and I've seen this poll, maybe it's not correct. They believe that Stalin, about at least half of the people think that Stalin is a bit of a hero, and that they look at him in a favorable light. If I'm wrong, you let me know. These are the posts, the polls that I've seen. And that's a different way of thinking about humanity. Stalin doesn't get nearly the recognition of infamy that Hitler did. And yet Stalin is responsible for at least as many, if not more, probably way more deaths. Again, in America, we don't get taught history very well. There's something in Ukraine called the Holodomor. It was the forced starvation of Ukrainians by the Soviets. And so in the 1930s, they intentionally took away all of the grain out of Ukraine, and so the Ukrainian peasants all starved, and so somewhere between 4 and 7 million Ukrainians died, and it was intentional. And interesting side note on that, I need to do some research. There was an American who went over, I believe from the New York Times, who was complicit in reporting that, oh yeah, it's just a natural occurrence, it's okay. And so, again, as Americans, we're pretty naive. We think that the world is a pretty fair place, nice, or other people are like us. And again, we're not perfect, I'm not saying that. But I think we're easily distracted by our desire to pay the bills, if you will. I say to any leader who's making decisions about Ukraine, any American leader or world leader, if you haven't spent time here in any city, but especially, we'll just make it Kyiv right now, and you're making decisions about how you're going to react to Ukraine and their invasion, you are doing yourself and the world a disservice. Everybody who's trying to form an opinion about Ukraine should come here. Okay? You're not going to die here. And if you do, hey, I'm pretty sure that I'm 100% sure that we're not just mortals here. We have a spirit that continues. That's another conversation. By the way, I'm entering a beautiful park here. Um, this is Taras Shevchenko Park. Just look behind me, right in the center of town here. Beautiful. I love walking through here. And this is, again, a sign of a very civilized peoples when they have beautiful public spaces. And Ukraine is full of them. And they're old. And I give credit to peoples of the past who knew it was important to have these. So I'm rambling here because there's so much to say. The big picture here is that these are good people. They want freedom. They want to keep what they have. They want to grow. People say, well, they have corruption. What country doesn't? Remember, in the United States, Donald Rumsfeld went on, it's on YouTube, you can still see it. He was testifying in front of Congress, and he admitted that there was $1 trillion unaccounted for in the defense budget over the course, I think it was of over 10 years. $1 trillion unaccounted for. That's corruption. And I don't think anybody lost their job. Most Americans don't remember that moment. It's still out there. Thank goodness we are in that age of preserving information if it hasn't been pulled down. And so any complaints of, oh, Ukraine is corrupt, whenever we're criticizing somebody else, we're criticizing ourselves. We all have something to work on as individuals as well as countries. So, as I finish up my last day here, and I'll be back, I'm going to be heading back to the Washington, D.C. area to participate in the Ukrainian Action Summit. It gives us an opportunity to gather as American citizens and go do what we are allowed to do, which is to go stand in front of our congressmen, congresswomen, their staff, and to say what we think is appropriate. And I will be saying, please, please do everything possible to support the defense of Ukrainians. Please provide maximum resources to do so. To me, it's inexcusable, and I'm at a point that a lot of Americans, especially the ones over here, are at, which is I don't recognize what's the decision-making process that's going on. It's not something that I've seen from any president, any party, and I don't like it. It feels like a betrayal of values. I didn't realize this about myself until all of this, and I guess I'm grateful for the craziness that's going on, or my at least view that it's crazy, is that I realized that I was imbued with certain values or thoughts about values that came from growing up in the United States. I thought we were the heroes. I thought we would always be on the side of freedom-loving peoples. And that doesn't appear to be the case at all in this. And it's quite disturbing because, again, when your identity is challenged, and not my personal one, but evidently I do have a part of me that has been programmed by my environment, and that's natural. When it's challenged, it makes you think. And I hope that we will rise up as individuals in the United States and have that discussion in a peaceful way and conclude and make it very clear to our leaders that we will not let Ukraine go to the ash heap, and we will not let them, and they're beautiful people. I want to see if I can get here. Let me get closer to this area. Let their beautiful people be subjected to the horrors that the invaders and their culture bring. You know, you're going to let this kid be indoctrinated into the Russian military, because that's what goes on. This is not, again, propaganda. This is factual. Over 20,000 documented cases of Ukrainian children being abducted and missing in Russia somewhere. They don't know. It's horrendous. It's a war crime. It is been done by many cultures. It's a war crime because the Germans did it, and then the powers that be said, well, we can't allow this ever to happen again. Well, it happened again. It happened in 2014 in Crimea. The Russians invaded, they grabbed Ukrainian kids, and they made them into Russian soldiers. And they are actually some of the kids now who are attacking Ukraine. It's horrendous. The brainwashing that goes on, again, is a reflection of a culture that does not value the individual spirit. We'll leave it at that. Folks, thank you so much. I hope this is of value to you. If you think I'm some agent from the United States, think again. I'm just an ordinary American. I'm over here providing psychological support services, best practices. I'm sharing with NGOs that are focused on the psychological support of children, of women, of veterans, athletes, you name it. Anybody who will listen, because we all need these tools, not just in Ukraine, all over the world, even in the United States. We don't have enough support. And so I hope I can contribute in a little bit, and that somebody who watches this will be motivated, and feel free to reach out to me. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.